Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Thank you to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers, and all of the new subscribers as well. Welcome to the channel and our regular live stream, our regular show. In case you're new to this channel, I post videos, I post regular live streams. My videos are pretty short with updates. In case you're interested more in shorter videos, you can go ahead and check my video tab. If you prefer live streams, more in-depth talk, more analysis, and more public opinion and participation from the community, then you've come to the right place. And tonight, before I open the space up to everyone, obviously afterwards, as we do it regularly, I will be talking about this unprecedented attack from Ansarullah in Yemen. These people prove time after time that they are people of principles, people of morals, people who act with bravery, with heroism that is unmatched. These people have been suffering for a very long time. They are under constant threats. They face economic hardships. They have problems with food. They have many problems. Yet they always take the correct position when it comes to Palestine. Why? Because they are morally consistent. They are people of faith. They take action where most of the shameful countries across the world do not. And they take action against who? Against a country committing a genocide. An act of barbarism, an act of medieval barbarism, supported by countries that talk in the name of human rights and democracy. Before I get into the subject, the details, why it matters so much, the potential repercussions, how we reached here, and what are we looking to see ahead of us, I just wanted to bring to your attention that I posted a couple of videos earlier on that you can go ahead and please watch after the live stream about Donald Trump's threat to everyone across the world who has American hostages, including obviously Gaza. And what that means when it comes to Donald Trump, I mean, lots of people have slight misunderstandings, to say the least, when it comes to Donald Trump, and they are expecting certain things from him. Now, I obviously said from the beginning, when it comes to things like elections and stuff, I'm in no position to endorse someone directly. I wouldn't do that. But I always said that there's a big problem with the 2 or 3 party system in many countries, not just in the United States, and that if someone wants to vote based on a cause like the Palestinian cause, which is something very worthy to vote for, because it's a case of human rights, it's a case of human suffering, then you can't give your vote to the big 2 parties, because we've seen their pattern of behavior and their complicity when it comes to this genocide and these crimes against humanity, and they have the same pattern of dehumanization of the Palestinian people. And dehumanization is not something to be taken lightly. It's something that is followed up with things that are tragic for humanity. Before any atrocity, you have to dehumanize someone, whether it's the Palestinian people, whether it's a European nation, whether it's part of your population, or whether it's people 2 or 3 or 4 or 5,000 miles away from you. You have to dehumanize them to do that. And that's why the media is so important, words are so important, and the lack of words is also important, to the good and the bad. And when it comes to the Republicans in the United States and the Democrats, we heard atrocities from both sides, at least from the ones who are leading at the top, who make the decisions. And Donald Trump is not better than Joe Biden when it comes to Palestine. I also posted another update when it comes to Lebanon. Obviously, we had another attack from the Iraqi resistance on Haifa. But the main topic of tonight is Yemen, and I already went through a couple of sources in Israel, outside of Israel, the statements that came from the Yemenis, and the act itself. So what did we have exactly? So last night we had a drone attack in central Tel Aviv. The footage that was released by some Israelis showed a drone coming from the north. By the way, that's the first thing. So at a first glance, you'd think it's Hezbollah, it's coming from the north. But obviously, we had Yemen taking responsibility, and they clarified, they elaborated. However, it's interesting that they chose to take their drone in that manner. I'm not sure what their purpose was when it comes to that. Clearly, Israel didn't have a clue about this drone, and it landed successfully where it was intended. Israel admitted that a member of their engineering corps was killed and several were wounded. Now, obviously, that's what they said. There was an assumption initially that the target was the US embassy or consulate in that region, and clearly the act was successful. Israel said that they viewed the drone, they knew that the drone is coming, but there was a human error in intercepting it. That's what someone who is failing will say. Come up with excuses. Oh, we knew it was coming, but there was a human error. Excuse me, but you have a drone coming, going to land in Tel Aviv. You can't afford human mistakes. My assumption is that Israel did not know, and they were very much shocked and surprised by this drone, like they were surprised with so many drones. For example, the many drones that Hezbollah sent them, the previous drones from Yemen and Iraq that were not intercepted, and the surveillance drones that we recently saw from Hezbollah called Al-Hudhud, flying over Israel and taking photos and images and videos of everything, including sensitive military industrial complex locations, military bases, places that house the oil in Israel, factories, the Haifa port, very strategic locations, and all sorts of air defense batteries, by the way. The Iron Dome sitting there. So the purpose of this system is to intercept this, and it's sitting there being recorded by a Hezbollah drone. So there is a pattern of Israel not recognizing that there is such an attack on them. Why did they target Tel Aviv? Well, they targeted other places, and they targeted successfully. However, why Tel Aviv? Why this sophisticated attack, and why now? Firstly, there is a resemblance between this attack and the attacks that are coming from Hezbollah. That's why I initially personally thought it was Hezbollah. It has Hezbollah written all over it. Why? Because Hezbollah carry out these attacks regularly. Targeted drones land exactly where they're meant to land successfully without being monitored. Okay. And before I continue, the Virus 455, by the way, thank you so much for your super. Much appreciated. Hezbollah do that regularly. So that's why I personally initially thought it was Hezbollah. Obviously, we had this confirmation from Ansarullah saying what they usually say. What? We are continuing our attacks on the state committing genocide against our brothers and sisters, our oppressed people of Gaza, and we will not stop until this is lifted and the siege is lifted. Not just the genocide ends, the siege is lifted. This is a condition that not all other movements share, but Yemen does. Again, highlighting their nature as people who sacrifice and take an extra step, go the extra mile to lift the suffering of the innocent civilians in Gaza. Now, we obviously had Israel being outraged. We had lots of responses, lots of comments, and we had tones of escalation. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you is something that the Israeli Broadcasting Authority shared earlier this evening, just a couple of hours ago, with regards to a meeting that took place in Israel following this attack to discuss the potential retaliation from Israel. So we had, according to the Israeli Broadcasting Authority, talks in the previous hours in Israel regarding the response for the attack on Tel Aviv. We had a meeting on a political level, and they discussed how they would respond. And the security and military levels and establishments in Israel, they were discussing targeting, landing a blow, a very strong attack inside Yemeni territory. Inside Yemeni territory. This is coming from Israel. So far, Israel's backers, they were the ones who were generous. They went and fought against Yemen on behalf of this genocidal state. You see the difference in morals and principles, in worldview, in everything. The genocide coalition led by the United States and the UK. By the way, they're very secluded. Even many Western countries refuse to participate. Why? Because it's so shameful. And they also put themselves in a very dangerous position where they would harm their own economy because they're participating to defend a country committing a genocide in accordance to international law. And now we have more developments calling Israel officially an apartheid state, and Israel's obviously concerned about all of these things. Okay, these countries took the lead when it comes to defending Israel. How would Israel respond? What are they going to do? Send their fighter jets to Yemen? Do they know what's in the way? Do they know what type of air defense capabilities they have? Do they know how they would retaliate? What kind of bank of targets do they have in Yemen? Do they have a bank of targets bigger than that of the United Kingdom and the United States? And if so, why did they not share it with the US and the UK so that they can target them on their behalf? They already are there, forming a coalition and carrying out strikes against Yemen. What is Israel going to do? Clearly all talk, to act like they're doing something, land a massive blow, probably kill a lot of people, to show their bloodthirsty nation that, oh, look, we massacred so many of these people, please give us a clap. And the bloodthirsty maniacs will start clapping to them, like they did with the genocide in Gaza. Because don't forget, you have people in Israel calling for hundreds of thousands to be killed in Gaza, not just 10 or 20, or 30 or 40,000. But so far, that's all talk. We had an admission from the United States, from the military. There was an official who said that we are clearly not having any deterrence when it comes to Yemen. And that's very true. And we spoke about that many times. Why should they be deterred? You're talking about a nation already suffering, doing something out of principle. They don't fear death. And they're representing the millions going out on the streets every Friday. Have you seen the levels of protest today in Yemen? Have you seen? Do you monitor the protests every Friday in Yemen? Millions are in the streets. Millions. You're talking about a nation that has the support for Palestine embedded in its nature. And again, that's something we raised before. Their representatives are behaving in a more democratic manner than Western countries. Why? Because they're following the will of their people. If you have millions of people in the streets, they're giving you a mandate to act on their behalf, especially when it comes to such a massive case of injustice and suffering, then you act. So you have Yemen acting, being democratic, and you have Western countries. What are they trying to do? Trying to shut their own population down. Through what? through twisting the words and creating new laws that are weaponized and anti-Semitism and. They'll use every weapon to terrorize their own people, to keep them shut, and so that they continue their support for genocide, their shameful, abhorrent support for this genocidal state of Israel. Will Israel respond? Interesting question. They said they will respond before. And their excuse for not responding before was that there's a coalition. And again, why would they go all the way to Yemen now to attack? Why would they do that? To show their own population something. Is that going to change something when it comes to the Israelis? As in the part who already doesn't have faith in the government? Because Israel is split. There are several Israels now, by the way. But the people who oppose Benjamin Netanyahu, at least from the population, are people who oppose him up until the last second because he's tried and tested. They tested him for decades. They know him very well. And the people who support him are totally blind. It's like you're talking to a brick wall. So who are you? He's going to do that for the people who support him. But even if he doesn't, he'll come up with something else to convince them. They twist everything based on the will and the interest, and they'll get away with it, especially Benjamin Netanyahu. He knows how to get away with these things. There is also talk about Iran being responsible to this attack. You see what Israel is doing. You have multiple people inside Israeli politics talking about hitting the head of the snake. They're calling Iran the head of the snake. They say we need to hit the head of the snake. Hamas and Hezbollah and Yemen and Iraq, all of that is Iran. What are we talking about? Go and attack them. Now they're trying to convince other countries, and first and foremost the United States, that it's Iran. However, the United States, with all its complicity and support for this genocidal state, and bearing in mind that the United States administration is worse than Israel when it comes to this genocide, they know what Israel is trying to do. So I don't believe the United States administration will fall for it. And after these reports started emerging in Israel, they started posting counter reports saying that officials in Yemen, in Ansarullah, say that Iran wasn't involved, right? We had another article posted, it was in Ynet, saying Iran wasn't involved in the decision to attack Tel Aviv. We updated them afterwards. Nasser al-Din Amir, one of the Houthi spokesperson, said to media agency, and that was also reported in Israel. Why are they doing that? They're saying that to obviously tone it down with Iran and take down the expectations of retaliation with Iran, because we saw their embarrassment with Iran. Iran schooled them. Iran taught them many lessons after they attacked this consulate in Syria, and after Iran had their massive response when they attacked Israel, that led to a participation from 6 countries to try and defend this genocidal satanic death cult. One other very significant thing from this attack from Yemen, and then I'll open the space up for all of you, is the fact that Ansarullah called this drone Haifa. Haifa is the name of the Palestinian city that was ethnically cleansed and faced one of the biggest ethnic cleansing campaigns in 1948 alongside Haifa and Al-Lid and Al-Ramli, that still exists to this day, and you still have a number of Palestinians living there, and obviously buildings to date back to that period. But obviously Tel Aviv took the headlines, obviously, and Israel established it over there, and they're obviously sending a message to Israel, and they're using this terminology of Palestinian cities. Even if they attack Eilat, for example, they'll say we attacked al-Rashrash. al-Rashrash is the Palestinian name of the city before 1948. And again, after the ethnic cleansing campaign and the establishment of the State of Israel, it was changed to Eilat. But Ansarullah will call it Rashrash, or if they hit Ashkelon, they'll say we hit Asqalan, the original name, again signaling to Israel that all of your country is made up of fake names, and we targeted the original names, and that this land is occupied. And this is what I wanted to share with you in this live stream. Let me open the space up for all of your participation. Again, thank you so much everyone for tuning in for another Friday night live stream. Thank you again, the Virus 455, for your super, and Faraz Hussein. Thank you so much for your super. Faraz saying, Assalamu alaikum everyone, Brother Mahmoud. Why? Why what, my friend Faraz? If you wouldn't mind elaborating. And thank you for your super thanks. Let me go head up to the beginning of the live chat if we can. Obviously, if YouTube allows us. And if you wouldn't mind, if you have any, obviously, comments or questions, just to highlight them so I don't miss anything from you. Paul Ambrose and Tashikoma, you're both asking about the ICJ. Paul is saying, Mahmoud, how will the ICJ ruling affect everything? And Tashikoma is saying, what will happen now that the ICJ has decreed Israel as a country that violates international law? When it comes to the ICJ and when it comes to international law, the question everyone should be asking is, who will be enforcing it? Who will be enforcing it? It's all nice to have these court orders. ICJ ordered Israel to stop committing acts of genocide 20,000 bodies ago, 20,000 dead, butchered people ago. What happened after that? Israel butchered over 20,000 people. So it's all nice for them to say Israel is a country that violates international law, Israel is a country that commits genocide, Israel is an apartheid state. All of that is good progress. However, the bigger question is, will that be implemented? And if so, who will implement it? My argument is that we are where we are at the moment now, first and foremost, because of the perseverance and the heroic survival of the Palestinian people facing this genocide, including the main factor, the Palestinian resistance. If there was no one resisting Israel in Gaza, Israel would have carried out everything it wants, and the international community can say whatever the hell they want to say, and they will continue doing whatever the hell they want to do because they have the power and they are backed by superpowers that are more brutal than them. Let that be understood. Now, obviously, there is another support that the Palestinians are getting from the resistance fronts that's also changing a lot, not just a little bit. Hezbollah are totally exhausting the Israeli army. They are taking away over 50% of their resources. They're not allowing them to feel free in Gaza, and they are causing them a lot of destruction in the north, and they are forcing many people to leave, hundreds of thousands of people. They are shaking Israel from the core. Yemen, of course, we're witnessing what they're doing, and so is the obviously Iraqi resistance. Now, again, beautiful. Is someone going to implement it? Okay, they orders coming. Some people start arguing you don't have jurisdiction. You don't have jurisdiction. The previous British government was arguing you don't have jurisdiction. In the US, we had also statements, oh, you don't have jurisdiction. Some of the countries don't even recognize the ICJ, but they're signed to some of their conventions, like the Genocide Convention, for example. So although the United States does not recognize the ICJ's jurisdiction, they are a signatory to the Genocide Convention, which makes them responsible or requires them to do more action. But again, we saw no action. So in many of these things, it boils down first and foremost on the population in Gaza, then the supporting resistance fronts, and then the international pressure, all sorts of pressure. The pressure movements, the activists, the campaigners, people who are activists in many parts, media, social media, all of these things are very important. And obviously, once we start seeing results, then we'll say, fine. But so far, Israel is getting away. And although you have someone like Benjamin Netanyahu who's about to, at least, this is what we've been told, get an arrest warrant, being hosted in the United States of America. And that says a lot. And don't forget, these countries got away with mass murder previously. But they only want to implement it on Russia. Like this leader told Khan, the ICC is for African thugs like Putin. This is how they view it. A tool to obviously control the rest of the world while we get away with it. Typical arrogance and entitlement. And that was both from Paul and from Teshikoma. Stephen, thank you so much for your comment. Paz, how many people leaving Israel after the attack? Israel is very shady about numbers. Firstly, we had 1.2 million excluding descendants living outside of Israel permanently that Israel includes in their demographic calculations. That's before the 7th of October. 1 month after the 7th of October, Israel declared that 1 people are outside of Israel due to the war. 600,000 of which were on holiday and did not return due to the war, and over 350,000 left after the war began. However, Israel officially stopped releasing stats. What they've been releasing afterwards is propaganda. Why are they doing that? So that they don't put more pressure and panic in the public. Haaretz, for example, recently published an article saying, for those who are capable, 1 in 4 will be leaving Israel permanently. I spoke previously about the World Zionist Federation having polls with Israelis living abroad, in which 80% declare that they're never going back to Israel. The Kiryat Shmone residents, that's one of the settlements near Lebanon that's been heavily attacked by Hezbollah and still is, over 40% of the residents said they're not coming back. And again, these things are not 100% accurate, and the levels are much higher because, again, Israel is not releasing official statistics. Their national statistic body is not releasing accurate figures when it comes to this, so that they don't put more Israelis in panic mode. But in my conservative estimate, over 2 million only due to the war left Israel. If you add the 1.2 who were already out, you're talking about 3.2 million. Anwar La, thank you so much for your super. He said, the Dap force is getting humiliated in Gaza. The Houthis can hit Tel Aviv from 2,000 miles away, and they think a confrontation with the resistance in Lebanon will end well. Truly delusional. 100% totally delusional. And again, that shows you how much arrogance is included in their actions. They say arrogance blindens you. And these people lost hope. I mean, even when we're talking about Gaza, knowing that Gaza is the least equipped from the resistance fronts, invading Gaza was not a good option for them. It was not a good option for them, yet they did it. And now they're threatening Lebanon. There are people who are saying, we can't do it. We need to end it with Gaza first. And. But again, you're talking about a country led by Benjamin Netanyahu at the end of the day. And thank you again, Anwar, for your super. And also, Napweed, thank you so much for your super. You said all Arabs have a right and duty to defend each other. Yeah, every human being has a right to defend him or herself. If you want to get down to the bottom of it, it's a case of basic human rights. You're sitting there in your home, someone comes armed with a book that they claim is a divine promise and telling you, oh, get out of this house. This character in this book told me that I own the house, so get out, please. What would you do? Give him the house? Or fight for the house? Then they go in the house and tell, oh, this is my room and that tiny place is your room. And it's basic common sense, really. And this insanity, it has been going on for 76 years only because it was portrayed to be as something normal. And obviously, you had a lot of cover-up. Otherwise, if everything was so clear as it is now, do you think they would have had any sort of support from the beginning? Ismail Lami, Habibi Mahmoud, Ismail from Egypt here. Welcome, my brother. What do you believe Egypt can do to assist objectively? I believe that either all Arab countries move together with sanctions or nobody can act individually. Well, if we look at previous wars, Egypt never took a position that held Israel accountable and intimidated Israel. I mean, we had Israel being less confrontational, less genocidal in 2012 when we had a democratically elected government in Egypt, and less people died because of that. Why? Because at the time, the Egyptian president sent his prime minister to Gaza. So you had an Egyptian official from the government inside of Gaza showing solidarity with them. And although the talks were diplomatic, which is very typical to Egyptian diplomacy, the talks with any government usually are very, very diplomatic, non-hostile, non-confrontational. They might have had threats from under the ground. And look, Egypt has never been a fan of Israel, even as a government. Okay. Obviously, many people realize that the Camp David Accords were a mistake, but Egypt is no fan of Israel. And you're in Egypt, you realize that most of the training from Egypt comes against Israel. Egypt isn't preparing for a war with Libya as much as it is obviously on the northeastern front, which is Israel. Saying that, during this genocide, obviously the Egyptian government hasn't done enough to stop it. It's happening. No one did enough, by the way, not just Egypt. No one did anything enough to stop the genocide. So that's Egypt and other countries too. To Egypt's record, they did prevent the ethnic cleansing campaign from being implemented. That's something I gave Egypt from day one, and I'll give it to them today. And that's a government decision. And that's a government decision because they viewed it as a threat to Egypt. When all of the global countries were coming to Egypt and putting so much pressure for them to open the borders. Open the borders completely and get all of the Palestinian people in effect, ending Gaza. So Egypt, to a very large extent, prevented the ethnic cleansing campaign from happening by what they've done. However, obviously not enough to prevent the genocide. We had small altercations here and there that both sides toned down. Under the ground, there's undeniably something going on, and obviously the government will act like it's not happening, but everyone knows it's happening. How are the Palestinians able to continue? There's something happening. What can they do, and does that have to be with other countries? Well, they can take more steps that will apply more pressure on Israel, including leverage with other countries that they have relationships with, by the way. And it doesn't have to necessarily be agreed upon with the other Arab countries. Because look at it this way, although these groups who are effectively fighting Israel, are not in an official position, Hezbollah, Ansarullah, and the Iraqi resistance, they're not the official representative of the country, right? But look at what they're doing and look how effective it is. Look at how effective it is. Now, if they were able to do that, doesn't Egypt, with the largest army in the region, have a recipe for something without going completely all out? I'm sure there must be something that can be done, even when it comes to certain actions against Israel and certain actions with countries that are involved with Israel. And clearly that hasn't happened yet. There is something to be done, but clearly the decision makers in Egypt chose not to go down that path for obviously their reasons, Again, they could be viewing that as a participation, then an excuse for Egypt collapsing altogether. That's an argument. Israel still has ambitions in Egypt. They have ambitions in Sinai. And if they were to go on an all-out war with Egypt, the Western countries that act like they're with Egypt will side with Israel most likely. So they're probably aware of all of that. But unfortunately, the suffering continues with the Palestinian people. And I hope that elaborates. And that was from Ismail. Thank you so much. Teshikoma is saying, wouldn't this make resistance groups legit and not terrorists, though? ICJ. Listen, they're already legit. That's the thing. What are we talking about? Well, what are we talking about with all of this terrorist garbage, I said it many times, I'll say it again. Who labels these resistance movements as terrorists? The great grandfathers of hyper-terrorism, the colonialists, the people who enslaved nations, the people who committed genocides, the people who slaughtered themselves in World War II, coming to tell people who fight for their rights terror. Who are you? Who the bloody hell are you to even have an opinion about nations in that region and what they should and shouldn't do to protect themselves? Who's any of us to tell the people of Gaza how they should and shouldn't act? Who are we? They are the people suffering. Typical arrogance and, this colonialist approach. Supremacy too, we're superior, we're moral high ground. Shut up, moral high ground. Well, you showed us your morals now with supporting this genocide. Let's talk about Hamas. Let's give Hamas as an example. Who labels them as a terrorist organization? 34 countries. Who are they? Israel, the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Paraguay, and Japan, and the EU. Most of them rich history of hyper genocides across the world and colonization and crimes against humanity at a mass level. How much are they in comparison to the world, right? Because they talk as if they're the international community. 17%. 34 countries, 195 officially so far. 161 countries don't view Hamas as a terrorist organization. That's 83% of the world, ya habibi. What does that mean? That the world views them as legit. But the arrogant, supremacist loudmouths who control the media and have so much control and power don't. So they fool the masses by planting in their head that there are terrorists. Terrorists. But their genocides across all of the world is spreading democracy and human rights and protecting women's rights. So that's number one, okay? Then it's already protected under international law. The United Nations had resolutions in the 80s, back in the days of the Intifada in 1987, hailing the Palestinian Intifada or uprising, calling for people to support the resistance, legitimizing armed resistance because it's obviously protected in international law. But they sell the people the lie that they don't have a right. That's why they constantly used to bang on about Israel having the right to defend itself. Why did they used to say that sentence? Because they don't have a right to defend themselves. They have an obligation to get the hell out of occupied territories. Or if they're staying there, to protect the civilian that they're occupying militarily. They don't have a right. That's why they constantly repeat the lie so that the sheeple can believe it. Israel does not have a right to defend itself. It has a right to dismantle itself. And the people who have a right to resist are the people facing occupation. They have the right to resist. And then you can talk to me about the levels of resistance, how many, what, this and that. And okay, then you can have a bit of talk here and there. But the principle of resistance, that's protected in international law. And before international law, human law and divine law too. Because not everything ends with international law. Why? Because now it's ink on paper, international law. The law, the factual law is the law of power. That's the law. If there was international law and that was implemented equally on everyone, we would have been living in utopia. We would have been living in utopia. If everyone had equal rights, you wouldn't have had anything. Because you all have freedom, you all have access to food, water. You're at liberty to go and live wherever the hell you want to live. And go ahead with life. But they're not implementing any of that. They are implementing an international law of mafia, of cartels, of power, of slaughter. The people in power commit crimes 1 million times worse than the biggest cartel you can imagine. So they're not entitled to. Whenever someone says anything about the resistance, who are they? That's the question you need to ask. Who are you, sir? Who are you? What's your background? Where are you coming from? What did you commit? What did your country commit? And what makes you think you have the right to label any of these movements as terrorists or as people who don't have a right to resist? You're not entitled to. That, though, from the ICJ, heightens that. It gives it a push. They're not legit. Because that's the thing here. The end argument is, okay, if they are oppressed, if they are occupied, if they do have a right to protect themselves, that's why they don't want to go to that length, that they don't have a right to, because even, many journalists cornered officials from the United States and other countries asking them directly, do the Palestinians have a right to defend themselves? And they wouldn't dare say yes. Why? Because they view the Palestinians as subhuman who don't who don't deserve equal rights. That's why. Do I need him to tell me or justify the resistance? Of course not. Who the hell is he to me? I know what's happening. I know the people, and I don't need anyone to legitimize what these people have a right to do. What kind of an entitled, arrogant approach is that? That's why with every imbecile talking about the day after in Gaza, who the hell is anyone to talk about the day after in Gaza? They are the people facing genocide. No one is stopping this genocide. They're recording this genocide. It's been going on for 10 months. And you want to tell them, whoever you are, by the way, who they should and shouldn't choose? No, sorry. They have the right. And the resistance is legitimate with or without the ICJ anyway. However, this gives it more of a push. And it makes the argument stronger. Because Lord knows Israel is losing the argument. Israel is now viewed as a pariah state. And it's revealing itself for what it exactly is. A genocidal supremacist ethnocracy, an apartheid state, a terrorist state, a real state of terror. And that was from Teshikoma. Thank you so much for that question. Dana Doe, do we think Russia heading the United Nations Security Council will have any effects on the trajectory of this leg of genocide or future dismantling of colonies? I see people hopeful in this regard. That's very interesting, Dana. I think whoever heads the United Nations Security Council does not make a lot of difference so long as the mechanism of the United Nations Security Council, remains the same, which is countries with completely opposing views have vetoes, and these countries do not represent the majority of the global population. So even if they're heading it or if they're not heading it, that's not going to make a lot of a difference. They will voice their opinions. They will push for certain things. They pushed for a ceasefire immediately if the United States and the United Kingdom voted for a ceasefire that Russia called for, and they had a united stance against committing a genocide against the Palestinian people and actually enforced it, we wouldn't have been here. But again, the United Nations, it's an organization really and truly that followed the League of Nations. It's the soft power of the United States. That's how it was established. All of that needs to be reviewed. You need to have a lot of reform when it comes to international law and international organizations. And with the Security Council itself, I mean, it's not representing what? 90% of the world. It's absurd. It's absurd. And they can't veto, right? The United States, half of its vetoes in total, the vast majority of them, were for the sake of Israel, defending Israel. What kind of an organization is this? Just because a country says, no, they have a right to kill people. So unfortunately, no. But what is changing the dynamics of global power is the rise of a multipolar world, not a unipolar world. The world is no longer controlled only by the United States. And I've had a couple of more supers. Thank you so much. From Faraz Hussein, Bizzer, Derry, Jerry, Vivet, Shantia, and Real Sheikh Apia. Thank you so much. I'll start with Faraz. What leaders were murdered in the Hezbollah? Bro, and I got approved to vote again. Who should I vote for? My crazy sister still wants to support Biden. Okay. Well, they target some of their field leading figures who actually operate in actions against Israel. That's number one. And they are also involving other people from other resistance movements who are not belonging to Hezbollah, but obviously coordinate with them. Who should you vote for? I'll tell you who you shouldn't vote for. People with a proven track record of supporting genocide. Simple. Trump is clearly legitimizing it. Biden supports it. How can anyone vote for anyone who supports genocide, really, or didn't even take enough action against it? So definitely not these two. Bizer, I love your... I need to listen to you one day. I wish YouTube would do recording. The Houthis putting in work. Yes. Yeah, they are, my friend. They are. And thank you so much for your super. And Derry Jerry as well, Vivette. Saying hi, Mahmoud, blessings and peace to you and everyone. Thank you so much. And so to you as well. Thank you so much, Vivette, for your super and for your membership as well. And last one was from, so far was from Real Sheikapia. Trump has one Jewish son-in-law and one Lebanese son-in-law. Thoughts? The ethnicity of the people who they're related to does not concern me, and I couldn't care less about it. I don't care who his son-in-law or daughter-in-law is, where they're from, or what they call themselves. All I care is what they do, these people in power. So linking someone to, some people thought that, they might have some sort of a positive influence or what have you. When you talk about Lebanese, okay, are all Lebanese one? That's number one. A Jewish, this law and that in law, are all Jews the same? Of course not. So to me, that's not something that I would even care about. I would care about what they do and their actions. And the people who are obviously linked with him, is there a level of influence? Again, assuming that they might have, a certain position that is against the general position of the administration. I don't think so. And I think the most important thing is to obviously focus on the actions and not really about the ethnicity and background of the people who commit it. And again, that was from Real Sheikapia. Thank you so much for your super thanks. And Paul Ambrose again, does the ICJ ruling give countries right and responsibility to protect? They already have a right and a responsibility to protect. They have a right to carry out a strike against Israel tomorrow. All of them have a right. Why? The United Nations gives you the right to attack a country that's acting in a reckless manner with a proven track record of crimes against humanity. Everyone has a right for a preemptive strike against Israel, by the way. But that's the thing. Western powers will want to sell you the delusion that they're the only ones entitled for a preemptive strike. Only them. Ya haram. But not other countries. See? Who? The question is who? Is anyone doing it? No one is doing it. No one is doing it. It's the lack of intimidation that's allowing this genocide to go ahead. If there was one country with the capability telling Israel, listen, if you dare to do something with Gaza, for example, I'll flatten you. I'll flatten parts of Israel or something of the sort. Would they do it? No, they wouldn't. If they started and no one said anything, and then after they started to commit a genocide and literally flatten Gaza like they always do, and they quote mow the lawn, imagine how depraved this nation is. And then you had a country saying, if you continue to do that, I will level parts of your country. And Israel knew they had the capacity to do it. Do you think they would? No. Why? They're cowards. They're cowards who are used to getting this spoilt bastard child behavior from Western powers. This is how they're used to it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to commit what they're doing. And the other countries, they have a responsibility, they have a right, and they have rights for preemptive strikes as well. And that was from Paul. Thank you so much. Wouldn't this ruling give Russia and Iran the green light to send weapons to the resistance? That from Teshikoma. They already have a right. Everyone has a right to send the resistance whatever it needs to defend the Palestinian people against a genocidal state committing crimes against humanity. Isn't that what the West is doing with Ukraine? Aren't they supporting Ukraine with hundreds of billions to protect themselves and their people from Russian aggression and occupation? Well, based on that pattern, the Palestinian resistance deserves to be trained across the world. Its leaders should be honored everywhere, and they should be receiving tens of billions in equipment, in power, in everything that they need. Or is there a different treatment, right? Are there double standards anywhere? Is there hypocrisy somewhere? They already do. They already do. But again, it would kind of push it forward. All of these things delegitimize Israel further. And it's not as if Israel is not concerned about that. Israel is concerned about that. They act like they're not. They will try and downplay it to an extent, but they don't like it. They do not like it. Mike Nash, when Yemen is trying to help Palestine, Saudi and Emirates are providing land corridor to supply fresh fruits to IDF and other stuff too that they need. Sending them things that they need while they starve the Palestinian people, while they starve Palestinian infants to death, while they cut every lifeline of women and children and innocent civilians and men and elderly. It shows you the true colors of these nations, of these countries. And again, you're talking about the governments, obviously. With the people, you will have support here and there. Levels will obviously differ from one place to another, but at a government level, Ram Plans FIFA was supposed to give an answer today, but they said they need one more week to reach a decision. Everyone was quick, though, to ban Russia, weren't they? They were so quick. Why? Because Western powers told them. But when the Palestinians ask, other countries, wasn't Russia banned from anything? And what was the argument when you banned everyone from Russia? Hell, like I said the other day, Facebook, they lifted hate speech when it comes to the Russian people. Imagine that, two countries having a war, right? And people deserve equal rights in every country. Yet, they lifted off hate speech restrictions when it comes to Russians altogether. Not like, the Russian government or the Russian army or Putin or the Russian people. Russophobia. Russians started to feel threatened in countries in Europe because of this hostile manner they were talking about the Russians. Jimmy Eyes, Palestine will be free, 100%. And Philip Coos, love your view on life, the world, fellow human. We are all equal no matter where we are from or religion or race. Thank you so much, Philip. Much appreciated, my friend. Jimmy Eyes. And he bets that Biden will make a mistake and call Netanyahu Putin president of Israel. That's the thing, he keeps everyone on tenterhooks. Joe Biden. Imagine you're a leader and Biden is about to make it. Wouldn't you be nervous? Wouldn't you be nervous next to him? It's like, oh my God, what is he going to say? And that Zelensky comment, you can see how mortified Zelensky was when he called him president of Ukraine, President Putin. Unbelievable. I hope we'll see a glitch. I mean, it's going to make it funny. Netanyahu. Imagine he calls him Sinwar. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Prime Minister of Israel, Yahya Sinwar. That would be hilarious. Eileen, voting makes a statement even if a person you are voting for someone who can't win. Definitely. What's voting? You're showing your approval of that person. You're showing your approval for that person. How can any person with an ounce of morals and principles give approval to someone who supports genocide or doesn't do anything against it? How can you? So of course it would be voting for anyone else but. Tashikom is also saying, why is Israel targeting Qatar? Because they're disappointed with them. Israel is disappointed with Qatar and with Egypt too. They had escalations and tensions between them and the Qataris and the Egyptians. Why? Because they want Qatar and Egypt to act with the Palestinian side as the US is. Started off with, releasing fake news about Qatar firstly. Oh, Hamas are leaving and this and that. Then they started saying that Qatar supports terror. Qatar supports terror. You have had ties with Qatar for decades. You approved hundreds of millions from Qatar to Gaza under Hamas. Who are you fooling? And with Egypt, because to them, they know what Egypt is about, and they're not seeing the pressure on Hamas from these countries. Thinking that everyone in the negotiations should be applying pressure on one side only. And they don't want that. But what are their other options? If they're going to get rid of Qatar, for example, as a mediator, who are they going to go to? If the negotiations were fair anyway, you would have had a mediator that's 100% on the Palestinian resistance side, not just the Palestinian people. Like the US is with the IDF 100%. Simple. Yet you have Qatar and Egypt who are relatively neutral. I mean, Qatar, they have positions politically that are better in other countries. Egypt, certain statements, obviously Israel did not like them, but they are not to the Palestinian side like the US is to Israel, right? Yet with that, Israel doesn't like that. That's why they will have so many negative statements against Qatar. Jimmy Eyes, the news said the Houthis will have missiles that will reach the US by the next year, and they plan on targeting nuclear plants. There aren't any other info on that. Will they have the capability? Probably, yeah. I mean, they already have hypersonic missiles and stuff, but will they attack the US? I highly doubt so. And nuclear plants, like, that's something very, very unlikely. Why? Because obviously, when you talk about nuclear plants and when you talk about sensitive places, you're talking about next level protection. It's not that they cannot be targeted or that they're, completely untouchable. No, we see that happening. But that's quite unlikely, in my opinion. I mean, don't forget one thing as well, it's the population are constantly being bombarded with propaganda and lies, as if these people want to attack you. These people of that region want you just to get the hell away from their business and stop supporting criminals internally in their countries. That's what they want from you. They don't have a problem with American people. They don't have a problem with European people. But the corrupt people in power and in mainstream media brainwash the population to psychologically control them and sell them the lie that they have a problem with you. They have a problem with all of your views. They have a problem with everything you stand for. As if they stand for anything. Like they'll set a set of values and they go against every single one of them. Democracy, human rights, respect for other people, regardless of their faith, and da, 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 da. Bang, bang, bang. They shoot them to death, these values. And these people, what does Yemen want? Why are they attacking US ships now? Because US ships are attacking them. Otherwise, the US was going in and out next to the Houthis, weren't they? Weren't they? But when you declare war, when you take a hostile position against them, they're going to defend themselves. So the only thing the peoples of those regions are asking for is stay the hell out of our business and stop supporting war criminals and genocidal maniacs and brutal dictatorships and. That's what they want. And I personally haven't heard that, by the way. But I wouldn't be surprised if such things are released. Kate is saying, will Israel be successful in modernizing Islam in Gaza to be just like Saudi or Qatar, UAE or Morocco? Well, there are a couple of things that are totally wrong in that phrasing. I'm not sure if you meant them, Kate. Modernizing Islam. Islam is a religion. It doesn't need modernization. It's a perfect religion as it is. And modernizing Islam hints that Islam needs some sort of modernization. It doesn't need any modernization. Islam is a perfect religion, the religion that's coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the Arabic word of God, following the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. If you mean, giving the Gazans a more twisted view on Islam, right? Removing certain elements of Islam like they want to do in some other countries, then no, I don't think they'll be successful. Because firstly, they don't have any control on the ground. That's number one. Secondly, the people of Gaza know them very well. And the thing that should be obviously modernized and reviewed and de-radicalized is this genocidal state, this genocidal supremacist, racist ethnocracy that's causing such massive crimes against humanity and war crimes and a genocide against the Palestinian people. And obviously the Gazans, they know that very well. And by the way, when it comes to, even when you talk about the religious interpretation of Islam. Because a lot of the time, even when people in general they talk about religion, they mean the interpretation of it based on certain things over the religious establishment. And I regularly have and had conversations with people who are atheists. Usually the problem will lie down in religious establishments and interpretations of Islam or what have you. These countries, with or without Israeli intervention, by the way, they have an interest in a certain version of Islam being promoted. Let's make that clear. A certain version, some of them, I'm not talking about all of them, that idolizes the ruler at the end of the day and protects them. That's why in many cases you will see the religious establishment in many countries very tied to the government. And the people who are in top positions when it comes to religious establishments, their purpose is to save the ruler. Save the ruler. And again, that does vary from state to state. But in Gaza, the people know exactly who they're facing. They know their faith very well, and they know their enemy very well. And they know what their enemy has done to them historically and to this day. And again, if Israel is not successful in changing anything over the ground in Gaza, they will not be able to successfully change anything when it comes to the education system, for example, or what have you. And they have the audacity to talk about education systems in other countries. Imagine that. Like they'll always criticize Egypt, They'll say, oh, Al-Azhar needs reform. Al-Azhar, which is one of the oldest institutions that many of the great scholars of Islam graduated from, they will say they need a reform. They will need a reform, and they have a hostile approach. Towards what? Towards a criminal entity? Thank you, well done. Every institution should have a hostile approach against a country committing genocide. If you're not, then there's something wrong with you. If a religious establishment is not calling out a genocidal state for what it is and supporting the people who are being oppressed so greatly, then they have a problem. They have a big problem. And that was from Kate, and thank you so much for your super, and I hope you understand my elaboration. Kate is also saying the Qatar-Egypt negotiators are now saying Israel is not serious on a ceasefire. Why does it take them so long to finally realize they were played? It's because their role is obviously try and reach an agreement, and it's agonizing. This process is a very difficult, agonizing process that requires constantly dealing with people who you don't like and discussing things you don't like. And they understand that very well. Everyone involved understands that, by the way. Everyone involved in these negotiations understands that. However, the fact that they're saying these statements now signals that they are slowly losing their patience. They know their position is very much important. They genuinely want to reach a ceasefire. It's not that they're not. They are putting a lot of effort in, including certain amendments, including certain terminology, including the extra mile by trying to reach the ceasefire. And they're seeing that there is one man in the way, and that one man is Benjamin Netanyahu. And that's not only related to the mediators, by the way. That is also related to the Israeli public. The Israeli public understand very well that Bibi Netanyahu is the man who is causing this. Now the top figures are saying that. What? The head of the Mossad with his hint the other day telling Netanyahu the female prisoners don't have weeks to wait. Gallant yesterday saying, the defense minister, that we don't have 2 weeks even, saying that there's a deal on the table and just requires Benjamin Netanyahu to sign, and he doesn't want to. So to Egypt and to Qatar, if the Israelis are seeing that, if the negotiating, this is what you need to understand, they clearly have an understanding with the negotiators from the Israeli side. Why? Because they've seen the progress. Yet when they go back after having all of these developments, they go back and Netanyahu comes with another impossible demand or a stick in the wheel. Why? To stop it. Same pattern that they had before. Half a year ago, mediators used to say, if we continue down the same path, we'll be negotiating for a year. Or that Benjamin Netanyahu will order us something in the morning and come up with something contradicting in the evening. Or that he is adding impossible tasks to hinder the negotiations. And now, they're trying to apply more pressure by saying these things. Marv Verk is asking about Ethiopia and their position. We haven't heard a lot from them, really. We haven't heard a lot from them about what's happening. And they're not a really big player when it comes to this. Ansarullah saying, Mahmoud, what's your position on the Hiraba, Quran 533? You know, the Quran says unlawful murder and warfare. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Quran views life as something very sacred. You know, one verse says, من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا ومن أحياها فكأنما أحيا الناس جميعا. Meaning, he who has killed soul in an unjustified manner or has corrupted on earth, as if they killed everyone on earth. So killing an innocent soul it's as if you're killing everyone on earth. وَمَنْ أَحْيَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. And he who has saved a life, it's as if he has saved the entire humanity. When it comes to Hiraba, the main purpose is to prevent corruption and prevent unlawful murder and warfare. And that's why, from an Islamic perspective, people who commit crimes at a grave scale, they must be punished one way or another, to prevent them from committing that crime again. Because from an Islamic perspective, the main element is mercy. That's why, God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. And my mercy has encompassed everything. You will always, when you start reciting Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, all compassionate, all merciful, all graceful, most gracious, most merciful. And part of the mercy is preventing corruption, preventing the mass murder, right? And obviously corruption is a very large term. But Islam has a very big say when it comes to preventing that. And I hope that elaborates that. That's from Ansarullah. And Kate is also saying about Netanyahu canceling his trip to DC, and if he's waiting for Trump to come back on the 25th. Did he cancel? I didn't hear that. I heard he was actually going there and planning to meet both Biden and Trump. No, it looks like he is going. It looks like I didn't hear that, Kate, unless you have something new for me. I haven't seen anything as such. Now, mind you, there's a lot of pressure, and the only thing that you need to note here is that there's a lot of preparation for him in the United States. Obviously, he's going to be met with people. But so far, Israel hasn't confirmed where he will be residing. He has two hotel options, and technically the leader in Israel should choose the cheaper option. However, Netanyahu is known not to be choosing the cheaper option. And he might argue that, we had to do something that to protect our safety and what have you. And they're not confirming that till now, so that people who potentially will protest against him don't have preparation, so that they can catch them off guard if they can, or delay the declaration of his visit and where he will be staying in that visit up until the last second. Kate, again, does the PA and Hamas need the Chinese to be a referee, or to them to be united, Arab not-blooded, or Abbas stubborn goat? They don't need that. And as a matter of fact, they've always stated that we can deal with our stuff. But these countries, they have initiatives from their own side. They have their own initiatives, right? To do certain things for their own policies, by the way. So when these countries want to tell you we want reconciliation or what have you, they're also looking at stability, economy, all of these things. And obviously China and Russia have a far greater and much better, a lot better approach when it comes to the Palestinians. Obviously, you see the other side's trying to obviously demonize Hamas and the resistance 24/7, and the others are trying to obviously do these things. Again, it's an initiative. Well, don't these people know what's happening and what's causing the divisions? They do. But again, when we talk about unity, right? It's such a large term, unity, being united. What do you unite with? As good as it is in terms of a term, unity, but what do you unite with? Okay, if me and you share a set of principles, let's say we have a common language, we have an understanding, we have certain things that we don't agree with or disagree with heavily, per se, for example, but we agree on certain things. You can talk about, for example, certain political unity or having a joint party, what have you. The problem that you have is you have a campaign represented by Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, that tied its fate with the Israeli occupation. These people survive with Israel. When Israel collapses, they will collapse with it. You need to understand that. And again, that's not saying everyone there and all of the... No, I'm talking about certain figures in the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. There's a good number. Led by the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. His fate is tied with Israel. Once Israel is gone, he will be gone. Do you think he voted for? Did someone vote for him? Was he elected? What do the people in the West Bank think of him? What do the people inside the Palestinian Authority think of him? What do the Fatah movement members think of him? On the contrary, you have Hamas, and not just Hamas. It's the consensus of the Palestinian people. Hamas is just a movement. You have many other movements standing for Palestinian rights, historical rights, independence, right of return, Jerusalem, right? Equality. And you have a man in the West Bank that under his rule, Israel expanded further and further and further and stole more and more and more land and killed more and more Palestinians and had more administrative detention, more crimes, more suffering, more checkpoints. And they participate with them in targeting certain figures in the Palestinian society. And again, you have people inside that authority that do the contrary. But it's led by people who are going in a way that is completely against the general Palestinian consensus, which is human rights, equality. Equality. People just want to live normally. Before all of this, by the way, nationalism talk and this garbage, by the way, like if you ask me personally, I couldn't care less about nationalism or flags or what have you, but they represent a cause, right? That's something different. But if you had equality, who would care about and the average Palestinian person, right? Or the people who have been expelled from their homes in 1948 or 1967 or in other years and are waiting for the day where they can go back to their homes. They simply want equality. They want their rights. Again, that's another thing that we have as income paper in the UN. The UN Declaration of Universal Human Rights. Go and read up about it. I spoke about it in detail in my book, Universal Human Rights. Do we believe in them or not? Clearly, those in power have no regard to universal human rights whatsoever. And that hypocrisy has been blatant for 10 months now. In the way they talk about the Israeli side and the way they talk about the Palestinian side. The way they talk about self-defense and the way they talk about lack thereof. It's as if it doesn't exist there. The way they talk about casualties here and casualties there. Tashikam saying, I thought there are Fatah fighters fighting now with Hamas. There are, but there are Fatah in the West Bank too. There are obviously in both sides. Violet saying saving a life, does that include saving animals' lives? In that particular verse, no. It was saying about the people. An-nas in Arabic is the people. However, with regards to animal rights, that's also something that is very important. and you have a lot of mentions and in history about the importance of obviously protecting animals and animals' welfare as well. But that in particular talked about the people in general. And Violet, thank you so much, by the way, for your dedication and constant hard work. And I think, do we have anything else? Paul Ambrose, thank you for your detox video. It was something that came up in the editing software. I thought I'd add something in the background. That popped up. But yeah, that was just to kind of share my day off with you. Hopefully we'll have some more of them. That's if when there's a day off. Usually there aren't any days off. But we're here. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Guys, thank you so much for being with me again for another live stream. I highly enjoy our live streams together. Thank you so much for everyone who participated and shared their thoughts, and I apologize if I haven't been able to reach all of them, but I do appreciate them, do appreciate your input. Special thanks to everyone who sent supers, the virus, Faraz, Anwar, Napweed, Faraz, again, thank you, Bizer, Derry, Vivette, and Pia. Thank you so much for your kind support. If you're interested, by the way, I introduced some more stuff in my merch section. You can go ahead and view it in my on my community tab and on my channel description. Some nice statements and stuff if you're interested in anything as such, and obviously support our work through that and have something in return. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much. Stay blessed. And I'll hopefully be with you tomorrow, inshallah. And take care, everyone. Good night. Salam, everyone. Peace.